welcome to the Kanban Coaching Exchange. It's the first one after our August break, so hopefully you all had something lovely to do in August rather than be here in your evenings and your days learning with us. I'm sure you all did. So tonight, I'm pleased to announce that our guest speaker is Agnieszka, or Aga for short. And I first met Aga in 2023 when she started her journey towards being a Kanban trainer, and she was in my class. And what I love about Aga is her passion, and that will come across, you'll see, as she speaks to you, but she's got super passion, she's got super knowledgeable about Kanban, and she's got some really great experiences to share. So give us a warm welcome to Aga to the Kanban Coaching Exchange tonight. Welcome aboard. Over to you, my dear.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here, and thank you for this warm welcome. And really, I like to do things I'm passionate about, and then all the emotions go into it, and also my heart beats for Kanban also. And I hope you will see this today. And yeah, shortly, let's start. So the topic is about Kanban method and the postcards from the journey in business and life. So, like Helen said, we are just after the holiday and vacation season. So I wanted really to make a bridge with this workshop with you and share the stories, not only from business but also stories from our journeys, and bridge them to the patterns that we use in the office. And maybe also in the meantime, Helen, can you link the Miro board for me if I ask you? Or so as people are joining, you can also join on the Miro board, but first is small introduction. And to add a bit to it, I work in IT for over 18 years. So I decided to call it like 18 plus. So it's nothing fancy to tell like working 20 years. Still, I work mostly in international IT companies. I pivoted my career several times from process expert to project manager, and during last 5 years I'm working like as an agilist trainer, change agent, and from a year and a half I work for Schenkel Technology Center, and before I was working in mostly in telecommunication, ITC, so it was quite a pivot for me to dive into completely new logistic world, and I'm still discovering this. And I'm really a true Kanban enthusiast, and I became a Kanban trainer last year, and it was quite a journey through the 5 years. Starting as an agile coach. And what I have for you today is really this July and August, I completely switched. So even though I was working a bit, I switched a lot into this vacation mode, explored places. You can see some postcards here. Like first time I also tried workation. So I went on a business trip with my husband while he was on the business trip, and I was working remotely and a bit sightseeing, but I also had like ordinary holidays. And now September, back to the office. It's hard to switch for me, but then when I look back, a lot of good stuff is also happening here, and I want to transition like the experience that I have during the holidays also to some patterns which are easily explainable and maybe meaningful to see the same patterns from our personal life, how they apply to business. And now it's the time when I need to share with you the link. I don't see the chat. Okay. Okay, so you have the link in the chat. If you could join me here, okay, I already see you. And I wish to connect with you and also know the context when you are going. So I invite you here to add a photo and maybe some short message from yourself. So just select one of the postcards, and in a comment you can add like just the place, or maybe throughout the presentation you will have like a nice quote or some experience that you wish to leave here for us to see, so we can make like a collage of our summer here. And yeah, what I've put and what I will be talking about, I was on this workation, so you see me on the weekend at the Garda Lake, but my baggage was lost. So the story will be about the lost baggage, and I was having only like two shirts for 5 days. So it was like first time my baggage was lost. So also the experience of this process was a bridge for me for thinking also about work, and also visiting Montebaldo, and plenty of people there also triggered the connection with queuing. So this will be the stories from my side, and I see, Helen, you also posted yours. So if you can just shortly.
So literally last week I was in a place called Wells next to Sea, and I did put a little map at the top with a little red dot so you can see where that is for those that are not familiar. But you can see it's a very beautiful place. It's a coastal place, and it has fond memories for me because I went there all the time as a child, and it's where I feel close to my parents.
Okay, thanks, Helen, for sharing. So at any time, just if you are posting maybe next year, at any time of the presentation, feel free to add this, and I will be moving back to the thread, to the topic we have for today. Yeah. 1 second. It got lost. Yeah, when it's hidden. Okay. So before we start the discussion, I really want to set you up for sharing the stories, and why we are meeting here to exchange real examples. So it's not only for me to speak, but we are a small enough group to exchange and speak up, share your actual examples. And the idea about like discussing next to each other about personal life and the business, it's like about the idea of taking insights from one domain into another. So for example, observations from holiday trips to transfer them to business context. And when we discuss Kanban, we often say like, okay, it works in many markets. So it's not only coming from lean manufacturing and working in IT, but really it can be applied in different parts of the company. And what you try out in different types of teams or in different companies, you can also apply and adjust and apply in different contexts. And I'm the living example of that this works, like moving totally from telco to logistics. Still this has application. And if we will be sharing the examples, it's not simple copy paste. So these are inspiration, and then you always have to try and check and design the experiment. Like if something worked in one place, you don't have 100% guarantee that it will work in another place. And as an example from this, we have like I was queuing for Montebaldo cable car, and how they did it. When you order it online, like you have slots available, so you cannot book over the limit. So immediately, like it shows, okay, what's the capacity of the system and restricting the lip limits and how they are visualized. So how this is visualized for this physical service, we can also think of it and use for new application when we work with the teams. And maybe if we here meet as Kanban experts or people interested in Kanban, this might seem obvious for us. But when we think, okay, we need to sell it and explain it to our teams, it's really worth using simple examples which are speaking to the wider group. Okay, so this is how we start. I hope you can add the postcards, and we will go back to them at the conclusion. So that's why I'm not reviewing the postcards with you right now, but they will be of our interests when we conclude. And let me start with the first story. So really Bermuda Triangle, and I was chasing to check if my husband is really working in Italy during July. So I decided to go with him and for workation. The plane was from Warsaw to Venezia, and we traveled like in a group of people, around 7, and very quickly all the baggages came and only mine didn't. So I was a bit sad, but yeah, it was not so bad. And then from Venezia, we traveled to a different city, like 50 kilometers ahead, next to the factory. My husband had to visit. So it was not so easy. And as I have the badge from the baggage that it was expedite, so finally it reached me, but it took 5 days, and it was really confusing. For example, on the internet page from Venezia airport, completely different information than on the Lot Polish airport, and it was like a difference. So I only got the proper information from the Lot Polish airport, and then they took it to Venezia, and then I still waited, I think 3 days until the courier sent it from Venice to the place of where my hotel was. So it was really surprisingly long for me, and the baggage only was confused with Frankfurt. So the trip from Warsaw to my hotel, it took for the baggage like 5 working days. And when I had it, finally, I also noticed like this nice expedite tag. And to tell you, I also we also had these tags on the floor, like in logistics. So like if the baggage is delayed or it couldn't be loaded, like you use it to mark it to keep it quicker. And then I just want to engage with you, and maybe you can speak up or write on the chat or just speak up. Which of the Kanban practices might be mentioned here, like when we discuss this process? Maybe like what would be the bridges around visualize, making policies explicit, limiting WIP, feedback loops, managing the flow, or improving and evolving the process? Okay, yeah, this was the expedite that was not expedite, actually, really. So do you see which of the practices was applied here? And I'm just switching. Okay. I see you prefer to listen more. Or
Did they keep you posted of where your bag was at any given point of time?
No, they just I just have the information. Your bag, we still search for it. We will inform you when we find it, and then they informed me. We found it, and it's on its way to Venice. Yeah. Okay. So yeah.
So I agree with Sylvia and Alexandra. So there's some feedback loops going on.
Yes. Okay. So we have feedback loops.
Someone also says manage flow. 2 people says manage flow.
Yes.
John reckons you gave some feedback as well.
Yeah. Okay.
And visualize. I mean,
yes.
Track and trace is a critical feature. And being able to visualize where your baggage is and when you can expect to get it is going to be critical for your vacation or your workation.
Yes, exactly.
And I think we can do our own visualization because I've bought myself an air tag. So when I don't believe the airport's where it is, I know exactly where it is.
Yes, and with the air tag, we often use with children. Like we put the tag for their baggage, but I didn't. It was so simple and straight for me. I didn't thought of it, but for now, I will use it. So definitely visualization.
And make policies explicit also in the sense that when you register baggage for transportation by the airline, there are certain levels of service that they need to make available to you. And you need to know what those levels of service are and what you're entitled to.
Definitely. And for me, it was not so explicit. I had to dig through the conditions of the transport. Like they differ a bit, like from one company to another. Okay. So just to sum up, also like what hit me and like the elements visible. So this expedite class of service. So it has a rush tag. So they process it quicker through the system. And I tell you, like, this works, but it works only in between the airports. So it didn't work like not in the customer process. So it was also like to manage the system lead time, not the customer lead time. And yeah, so it was not with the customer focus. Visualization, so it was visible, and this search status was different on different applications, and then making policies explicit. So you say, okay, making policies explicit for then processing the lost luggage. But for me, it really made me angry. And my main takeaway from this experience is, okay, if we guard the process in the beginning, if we check properly before putting the luggage into the aircraft, then we are sure we don't have to bypass this with another process. So the cost of repairing the error and the impact is much bigger. So my main takeaway is like really on each stage in the flow, on each stage of the process to look on the quality. And this is like my main point here. And the other from the same trip, like maybe not with the lost luggage, but with the Montebaldo cable car. So like the way they limit the sale of the tickets. It's similar also, Helen, to the story like when we do the Kanban training and we have these tickets for in Japan, in
in the Imperial Gardens.
In the Imperial Gardens. So like not to use always the Imperial Gardens example to use, we may also use other examples from our experience. And I really wish to trigger your reflection and maybe some discussion at this point before we move forward. If you had such a situation in your business context, like if you have like maybe like in business it might be like lost tickets, or maybe in life it might be about the luggage, but it might be also like about the changed process. So from what context you can take it, or to what context you can take it, or if you see, okay, having this visualization or making policies explicit, like it's easy to say, so but then sometimes it is hard to implement. Maybe you can share some barriers about it. And really, I encourage you to speak up or post in the chat. Yes, and Helen also reminded, post in the chat, so you can join here to this reflection element. Anyone, like if for the people who maybe are not on their mobile, so it's okay also to speak up. Okay, and while you are thinking, like, the main opportunity and main takeaway for myself is like focusing on this technical excellence that supports the predictability of the service. So really something different is when I explain the theory, or when I work with the team and tell, okay, you should not push for testing something that is not ready, or like you should look at the quality or test many scenarios before releasing to production. So like if we discuss this on paper, we only need to feel the consequences when things doesn't go the proper way. Then you see what's the value of this quality and how it impacts the predictability. So I'll take it also like an opportunity for explanation of this service. And I cannot overemphasize this visualization. And when I say it, it's so trivial to say it, but many of the examples from my business life show that this is so meaningful and gives this many discoveries that sometimes like you talk to people and say, everybody says, okay, it's obvious, or we don't need to visualize it, or it's too much effort to visualize something. But once you do it and you see the difference in the process, it's like my first opportunity to share also with you. Just do visualization, and then it's really something on which you can build and move forward. And I also have the sad stories with the teams where we couldn't do needed basic visualization and we couldn't move forward totally from it. So like this is always the first step. Okay.
And in our examples that we're giving, just because Carsten was busy writing his postcard that he wasn't listening, bad example. That's like an example of not controlling your work in progress. Like where you've said context, have you seen this in a real situation in business or private? What exactly do you mean? Could you give us an example, Aga?
Yeah, I mean, like to use the private example in explaining to a person in business, like, okay, about for example, for this technical excellence, I meant, okay, if the element doesn't go the proper way, then instead of waiting 2 hours, you wait for it 5 days. And the same way with with some extension of application, and then discussing the rules and quality with a team of what's the impact of their actions, and not only showing them the statistics or some abstract examples, but also referring to different perspectives. Yeah, this was what we were saying. And Karsten, we were really, before the workshop, we were discussing with Helen, should we do simultaneously, like, okay, leave the space for the postcards and move through the topic to have something. So yeah, we actually did whip two things at a time, and we have now the experience that it doesn't work this well. Yeah, so you either do this or that.
Feedback loop.
Yeah.
Maybe it's only me that it's okay, but I'm completely lost because I didn't get the start of the whole story.
Okay, so this
I heard
is like
about luggage and something, but I don't have the story. Sorry for that.
It's good that you say so. So then we the next time we leave more time for the warm up or like dedicated focus, and we do one thing at a time. Yeah, and we have like what opportunity? Okay. And what's the reality? One of you posted limit WIP by reducing interruptions. Okay, so just focused, I see it as focused work, if I understand it correctly. Okay, and the other person I find house, horse, are paradigm for some business processes, so they are similar. And someone starts with the context, too many expedites in the system. Can you explain a bit what the situation was?
Sorry, that's me. I was obviously I have seen that in organizations where there's just like a gazillion expedites coming through. But I was then thinking about your situation where you lost your luggage. No one ever wants their luggage lost for 5 days. But then it occurred to me they expedited your ticket, but 5 days is not really expediting. And so have we got too many expedites in the system? And so therefore, actually, an expedite is worthless because it's just a standard class of service, and that's why it took you 5 days to get your work done. And so if I compare that to support teams that I see, support teams have like 20 expedites going on in a day and they've got 5 people in the team. That's not a good balanced system, and actually expedites are just standard pieces of work when you've got that many.
Yeah, and this is like really very often we see this in business, that it's that it's used too many times, and then it's just a standard ticket. And then my case was rather like the expedite was only on a fraction of the process, so it was from airport to the airport, like, and not from to the last mile of the customer. So it was it.
So I've got another example for you then. So that was like misaligned process, and so that can be directly correlated to what we see in teams, because we might have a team do part of the journey, but actually there's other teams that have to do work as well. And so these teams throw it over the fence. So somebody like, oh, well, your baggage was on the carousel, I'm going to throw that into a pile over there. And then it's somebody else's team that has to come in and then move that baggage. There's another team that has to then like send out an email. You see that happening in businesses all of the time. There's no handover or conjoined effort for that value flow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and to add to yes, and to that, so if we think about like with the handoff and the expedite with your bag, like it was expedited one place but not the other, how often are we in situations where like a team upstream is expediting just to hit a bottleneck? And so like this team did a bunch of extra work on this thing and it was just going to go sit anyways. So like continuity across the entire flow seems important too.
Yeah, I agree.
This is great example.
I would just add to Helen's point about connectedness. I think that's a key thing. With integration, I think integration is important, and technology usually is a good place to good thing to rely on rather than processes of automation and technology and triggers are usually a good thing to rely on. Humans can be unpredictable.
Yes. We want to limit the what's unpredictable. Okay, so let's move on to another example that often when we travel, like we travel together, or like if we travel as a couple, we say, okay, we travel together for years. It's obvious how we do it, but then we end up being angry at each other because one person expects something and the other doesn't deliver. So the car is not packed, and I want to go, or I should be a pilot, but I don't know the road. So yeah, it's better to make it explicit. And really, in business life, I have so many examples of people saying it's obvious when it was not. And mostly often we have we have some documented process which looks simple, and then when we look on the daily behaviors of people and how the process is actually lived, it might be like this river meandering, or even taking some shortcuts. So I don't take anything for granted. And when I work also with companies and teams and they say it's obvious, or if they say, oh, it's clear, we have documentation on it on Confluence, just refer to it. So it means nothing when it's not lived. So making policies explicit, it's not only about writing it on the paper, but about writing what actually is lived by the people. And I have some examples here for you from different workshops I did. So it's about discovering invisible parts of the process. And it was exactly this example when people were working together as a team for 3 or 4 years, and they were saying, okay, why we need to meet on a workshop and write the process that we know. And during the meeting, it only appeared, okay, we only know this area in the middle and we can control it. But then to make it finished, we pass it over to other team and we know they need to do something, but we guess, we are not sure what they do. And we have very little visibility until this reaches the final customer. And the other way around, like when I ask, okay, but how come you know what you do? Like how the ideas come to you? What's important? What's committed? Then it was mostly unknown. So very little information about the source of the demand, and only putting this all on the wall and on the paper disclosed that there are some parts and there are some actors that are not so well known. And the same way, putting this on paper showed like, okay, but how we wish, what we measure and how we name our customer lead time, how we call our system lead time. And even naming the system lead time was not obvious for this team. Like where they started the work was not only in one application. So for some parts they used Jira, for some parts they use other applications. And even naming explicitly when we commit, when is the point when we say, okay, we start working on it, and when we say like, okay, after this point we don't have control, our job is finished at a specific point. This was already a challenge. And even bigger challenge was naming customer lead when the customer lead time, when the team inside didn't have the clue when the customer heard that, okay, that something is ordered. Here it was digital marketing example when the when the team like the business team requested some materials to be published about the new product, and the request was here, but then the materials were gathered, created, and then the publishers start working only at a specific date, but the customer request was much earlier, and then it was also like globally selling the product on many markets, so it was ready when it was localized to different languages. So this was the example. And also about making policies, it's maybe not so much about making policies explicit, but about visualization. When I worked with this team, they discussed a lot about what they want to optimize, and like the story is also about optimizing what's worth optimizing, not necessarily what you know how to easily optimize. So they wanted to optimize, okay, we do some publishing manually, and it even takes sometimes like 2 minutes or even half an hour to publish. And we should do it automatically. Instead of 2 minutes, we will, or 30 minutes, we will have 0 minutes, and every publishing will go automatically. But they didn't look on the full process when we had a bottleneck, when we waited even 2 months for some materials. So we often tend to lean to the areas that we know and improve them, while we do not optimize the whole system. So this was really meaningful and revealing example. And I have the same question for you here. Like, do you have similar examples from your context and from your life in business, or maybe some stories about journeys, private journeys, or some private context? Like, what's the context, what's the reality? And for the reality, I really wish us to discuss like the obstacles that maybe you tried something and it was not easy to implement, and maybe some of the opportunities that you see when discussing visualization. For me, it was just to give you a hint. Like, for me, it was just that these policies, if they are somewhere in a drawer or somewhere published, but nobody knows where they are not helpful. So they are easier to follow if they are simply visible. So it might be that you feel you finished your job, but until it's visible and used, you didn't.
Just small comment, if I may, Agnieszka, just to refer for what you just said, is just my private experience from actually business context are, let's say, that the Conway law is really working in some situations. So this is often happening because people are looking, let's say, at my responsibility, yes, at my team, and what we should be responsible for, so that we are trying really to optimize in our area of responsibility, yes, in our team context, yes, and the process itself is flowing throughout the whole organizations, and this is really important, just not to miss it, that we are like one organism, and we should, let's say, not work in the silos, right? So that to catch the whole solution, the whole process end to end, and try to look for the optimization throughout the whole process. And it's really hard sometimes just to come outside of our team only, yes, or our unit responsibility, and to look for the throughout the whole process.
Yeah. But I think that's a behavior change that I often see within organizations, because, and I'm not beating up Scrum in any way, shape or form here, I love Scrum as well, but when you form Scrum teams, which many people start off doing, they're like optimized for the Scrum team, like focus on the Scrum team, improve your Scrum team, retro your Scrum team, everything is optimized for that team. But in reality, you often need people that sit outside of those teams to be able to help you to do the work. And so we've driven our teams to have this mindset, but in reality, they're now not thinking about the wider system, what you described. So we have to effectively coach them to now be players in a bigger system to enable them to get their piece of work done, rather than throw it over the fence.
Yeah. So this is connected.
Yeah, even so, from my previous company experience, that some curious situation when we know that the sales processes and the marketing process or campaigns, yes, are like strictly interconnected, yes, and there is like direct connection with them. And they were like people which were drafting all the processes separately, so saying that here is our sales let's say accountability, here is our let's say marketing process accountability, and they didn't even sit down together to plan the whole campaign. Just they were like in the silos, yes, and they were like analyzing, let's say like outputs rather than outcomes of the whole process, yes, like sales and marketing, how the whole campaign and how the whole process of communication collaboration between us, yes, what can we do better, let's say, and what is the, let's say, impact on the customer. I want so to change the whole process. So this is like from my really context that I saw such a processes with the strict line between those processes, yes, and it cannot work, yes. At least I don't know how, let's say, we can improve all the customer to make the customer let's say more satisfied.
Yeah. That's right. I also really like these comments that people often say that agile is without rules, and yeah, and also like in Kanban, like the assumption from the crowd, like from the people who are not so practitioners, they say, okay, but we are agile, we don't have rules. And here we say, okay, make policies explicit. So we don't say what kind of policies, what level of details you need, but for your business, you need some context. I really like this one. Thanks. I'm looking a bit at the time. That's why I'm moving forward. But yeah, jump in with the comments anytime you wish. And often when we travel, we hear like, "Are we there yet?" Especially from our children, but also like, okay, knowing what is our destination. And what pattern I can see often in business is what we call in Kanban false summit plateau. So how we call the mode when people say, okay, yes, Kanban, I know, I've done it, it helped me, thanks. Nothing more can be done, and this is very very often, and really people know only like the basic assumptions of the method, and see this like in a perspective to be used to certain level, and they don't see all the possibilities. And we have a map here, like how to help the teams discover adequate nearest development path. And this is yeah, and when this map is Kanban maturity model, I will move to this in a second. But what we wish to accomplish, like we don't have these clouds already on the path, but we say, okay, we do Kanban, we wish to develop further and in our needed perspective, and we know what our next steps would be. So this way, okay, we know where we are and we know what we can do next. But also, it's not that we should always push for development. We need to understand the business context that we are in, and reflect if it's necessary for us to introduce something next, something new. Maybe where we are, it's enough. And yeah, it's also like we can, looking on the map, we can say, okay, we do Kanban. We know that there is more to Kanban than what we do, but in our current context, it is enough. So it's not like when we start with something and we want to excel in a domain, sometimes we tend to overcomplicate, and it's also okay to say, okay, we know that there is more, but where we are in our context, this is enough. And for this, what we use is Kanban maturity model. I don't have like the feeling like how many of you are the mature experts of the model and how many of you are the curious discoverers. So this model simply describes in several dimensions behaviors and also practices. And what you can see here is a complex map that has plenty of very specific practices. But looking on this map, you can look and search like, okay, what actually, how I'm behaving. And okay, I have plenty of these practices from the level 1. And then it can guide you as a map, and you can discover, okay, what would be reasonable practice I can introduce to stabilize on a specific level. Or if you are ambitious or you need more, you can search for and think, okay, I'm here, and what would be the practice that I can introduce to move to the next level. So the whole story is not to chase every possible practice or every possible behavior, but to improve gradually depending on the place where we are now. So it would be, for example, first improving on how we manage single service before we move to optimizing network of services. And very often it is, okay, we want to optimize the portfolio, and even on the very simple level, we struggle. Yeah. And for the Kanban maturity model, you already have the link from Helen on the chat. And the same, I have quick question for you, like what it triggered. Like when we discuss this false summit plateau, the map, the different maps, and one of the maps might be the Kanban maturity model. Do you see any of these applications in your context, or maybe in reality you see some barriers? So you heard about this, but you never tried because in your real context you have some barriers for even trying this out. So for me, first of all, like the opportunity with the model, with this map and this approach is really to design adequately the nearest area for development for this specific team or this specific organization, not to go blindly, okay, if I do Kanban, I do this and that. I do what's adequate based on where they start, where they are. Okay. So barrier is uneven distribution of skills. So you cannot switch. So there is a specialization. Some of the tasks can be done only by part of the team. Yeah. Okay, and Jim is sharing also having the idea where can we go. Yeah, because sometimes this is blurred. Sometimes it's like looking through the clouds and only looking on the map. We can see, okay, we can try going here. We can go there. And Karsten, you are writing the comment about cherry picking. Yeah, so like, okay, we only select some of the practices and others we omit. So when this is important, so when we look on the model, so if you do some of the practices that are from the higher level, or you have like behaviors in the company are showing like even the mature level, but then in the practices you still lack, so it might be a bit imbalanced, and you may need to focus on balancing it first before moving forward.
I think the other thing is, so this is one of the first failure modes. The second failure mode is overreaching. So overreaching would be taking me to walk up Mount Everest. I'm not the fittest person in the world. I could probably walk up a small hill, but certainly walking up Everest without preparation is going to be me overreaching, which means I'm going to fail horrifically and absolutely hate it. And I tell you this because like what I also see in organizations is that the teams try to go from like here to here too fast. And then when it doesn't work or it's difficult, they say, oh, this is rubbish. This isn't going to work for us. So I think like I see the opposite of like, you know, being able to get there is that people try and go too fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also looking on the map may help them, okay, have a good, it's not yet for you, try first something simpler and put it into the perspective, in a proper, getting the proper perspective. So it's a tool for having the perspective. Mm-hmm. Okay, and yeah, we have a comment like, what's a comparison of maturity level? Can you explain it? Can a bit maturity level compared to the value for stakeholders? Mm-hmm.
Well,
so it's, mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we can go back to an example that David Anderson himself used when he criticized one team at Microsoft, which was level 5 of the capability maturity model in software development, but took 10 times longer than anybody else to get their work done. So when you get the value, what is the value of the work that you're doing, and not what is the level of the maturity of how you're doing the work? So we don't want to focus on achieving a maturity level as the goal. We want to focus on delivering value to the stakeholders more quickly and a greater amount as the goal.
Yeah, so we optimize for the business results, not for the process itself. Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that every team has different value. So if you're working maybe in a service support area, the value is that you get these fixes out. If you work in a support software delivery team, then it's very much going to be focused on the value of it. And so absolutely, we want to keep in mind what is the value, because we want a service that's fit for purpose, that keeps our customers and our stakeholders happy for ultimately what they're going to achieve. And people in this room are probably going to kill me for saying this, but I actually hate the word Kanban maturity model, because it makes it sound as if it's so tick box. And if you do this thing, amazingness is going to happen. Where in reality, it's that playlist of things that you can work on next to help you achieve certain things. And along with the practices goes the culture and the outcomes that you talk about, Robert, like the value, the reasons why we do these things. And so all of that stuff has to be looked at together.
Precisely.
Yeah, that's right. And also we often discuss like, okay, in one domain, in one area, or in one moment, you can be on certain maturity, but it's something continuous. So it might be like different branches of the business, or throughout the time, you need to maintain also and develop adequately. Okay. Let's deep dive to the last example. So like it's easy when it's done, and like we may hear pretty simple statements from the theory, but when we crash with the practice, it's quite the opposite. And here for the story, I don't have my own photos because and I was very happy to use Timothy Chalamet picture. I was riding on the dunes with my colleagues once 20 years ago, and it looked so easy, and I thought, okay, I will do it. And we went through, I learned, okay, how to lean, how to move on different surfaces. But in a certain point of time, we were on a hill such high that I said, no way, leave me alone, I will never go further. And then the guy who led us said, no, I cannot leave you here. We are on a desert, and you just need to go. And it's like this strong memory in my side, like in myself, like the barrier before doing it, and just doing it. It was simple, and when I did it, and then I could move forward. But yeah, so this is always like this leap that, like, okay, when you think of theory, It's easy when you do it, it's hard, but when you have done it already once or several times, it's back easy. And then, the conclusion is like when we start something new, when we start in a new team or in a new project, when I started here at Schenker, it was also the same. Like I came and the first week, I told everyone, yeah, but you are doing it wrong. I know how it should be done. Let's just do it different way. But then when you see the actual limitations in your actual context, you see, you clash with the reality. And then you are surprised, okay, I was not expecting this. These obstacles are like not written in any theory books. So you really learn by doing it. And then it's easy again. So now when we are referring back and we are simplifying the stories to share with others, when you hear them, they sometimes feel so obvious and so easy. But we know them because it worked for us for a specific context. And until you really implement them, it's not so obvious. And I'm really curious if you had the same with any of the examples and the practices. I already see some comment here. Maybe you want to read it through. Others. I don't know.
I think an example for me, just to give people some thinking time, is like the implementation of work in progress limits. Like to me, it's like easy, no brainer, absolutely, like we should be doing this thing. But then when you go into an organization, they've probably tried it and it's failed for some reason. Could be environment, it could just be that their work has got too much in, or maybe people didn't really understand the benefits and the purpose of it. So then you go through it again and you show the data and you can see how it helps, and it can help you make decisions about, do we need more people in the team? Do we need less people in the team? And so then after people then get fluid in using it and they understand the why, then it becomes much easier for them. And then it's like, oh, why did we not do this again in the past? So, you can see that quite often in some of the teams that we work with.
Yeah, and it's obvious with these WIP limits, but it's not easy at first. And I also struggled in several teams. Like everywhere I enter, it's hard. But then I know it's doable because I did it already. So I know that then it will be easy. So I have the motivation to try and work with a team on it. Okay, and also we have like comment like leading with compassion. So just to reflect back how it was for us when we started, and do not get angry at the teams or the individuals we are working with, because they also need to go through this process. Exactly.